everybody, and welcome to The World This Week. The UN and the US are stepping in to try to restore calm in Israel and the West Bank. Canada has a new prime minister, and he has a very thin resume. Joe Biden decided to stay home, and Hillary Clinton bounces in the polls as the Benghazi hearing drags for hours. These are some of the issues we'll touch upon this Sunday. With me this Sunday are Tal Shalev of I-24 News and Charles Biblisser, also of I-24 News. Tal, it looks like the United Nations and the United States are trying somewhat to step in very, very nervously, I would say.
Well, the United Nations Secretary General visit to Israel was basically just a token visit to show that the United Nations is alive and is interested. The more significant attempt was by Secretary Kerry, and actually he did achieve, it seems that he has achieved his first short-term goal, and that is to diffuse tensions about Temple Mount, because Israel claims that that is the source that has been fueling and igniting the violence. So Kerry,
this is the Jordanian king's idea to put cameras there.
Well,
live action.
Actually, there are already cameras on Temple Mount. This is not such a far-reaching concession from Netanyahu's point of view. But Kerry succeeds to renew the Israeli-Jordanian dialogue on Temple Mount. That is his first goal. But the Temple Mount understandings will not necessarily calm down the Palestinians. And when we talk about the long-term goal of this whole diplomatic effort, which is to try and see if there's a political path forward, that still seems miles away. It doesn't seem that any of the sides has the political capital that it needs in order to renew negotiations at this point.
Meanwhile, Charles, we're seeing more of ISIS around, definitely in the rhetoric of the Prime Minister Netanyahu, but not only.
Absolutely. The government is actually pushing to ban ISIS formally, finally, a long time in the making. ISIS has a foothold in Gaza, has taken responsibility for numerous rockets fired at Israel, has groups affiliated with ISIS, have a foothold in Sinai. They're 15 kilometers away on the Syrian border, and there's a real fear that they will as well gain a foothold within Israel proper. And this is a real fear, and the government is taking, through social media and whatnot, ISIS is an expert at conveying its message. They're trying to put a stop to it.
And now in Hebrew even.
Oh, yes, and obviously the video that was just released a couple of days ago in Hebrew warning Israelis of attacks.
Right. Tal, there was an interesting article, Revelations, by the Wall Street Journal this week that showed the mistrust between the United States and Israel vis-a-vis the whole Iran affair. How should we analyze that?
Well, first of all, we're 3 weeks ahead of a very crucial meeting between Netanyahu and Obama, the first meeting they've had since the Iran deal. So the time is ripe to have various scandalous or exciting reports about the duo. But yes, this story about the almost attack that Israel had launched in 2012 on the Iranian nuclear program has already been heard from the Israeli side. We heard it from former Defense Minister Ehud Barak just a few weeks ago. This time, this is this report sheds a light into how things looked on the American side. And yes, there is a lot of suspicion, and this just raises the question, or maybe enhances the challenge both Netanyahu and Obama have when they meet. Are they able to renew this trust? Can they renew a working relationship together?
Right, and according to this report, the Americans know everything, and the Israelis know quite a lot. So should we get excited over this?
I personally wasn't excited over the spying versus spying kind of narrative that came along with it, because we know now that everyone spies on everyone. The American spy, Germany actually is opening up a new investigation that the Americans are still spying on them after the Merkel incident just a couple of months ago, or maybe a year now. That being said, for me, it was the complete and total disconnect between allies over what Netanyahu deems as an existential threat to Israel. That, to me, was the shocker. The level of distrust is truly amazing.
Right. All right. Let's watch Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu this week getting carried away a little bit.
Other attacks on the Jewish community in 1920, 1921, 1929 were instigated by a call of the Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was later sought for war crimes in the Nuremberg trials because he had a central role in fomenting the final solution. He flew to Berlin. Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. You said, burn them.
Tal Shalev, Israeli historians are on the hills.
Well, yes, Netanyahu is constantly failed by his own words, but this was probably a very clear example of this. The Mufti debacle, actually Netanyahu brought up a well-known idea, but it has only been on the margins of academic Holocaust scholarship, and it came at a very sensitive timing, just ahead of his visit to Berlin. But this isn't the only time that Netanyahu's rhetoric has given him trouble in the past few weeks. There was another incident in which Netanyahu, in one hand, said that he has built less than his predecessors in the settlements, and in another hand, he said that he has built more than his predecessors. And add this to his comments before the elections about the Palestinian state, his credibility in the international community is definitely eroding, and his biggest luck is that his counterparts, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, doesn't have such a high credibility, isn't considered that trustworthy either. But that being said, we should note that actually these comments, the Mufti debacle, will not necessarily hurt Netanyahu in his own political base, who is desperately trying to prove that Palestinian terror doesn't stem out of the settlement frustration, but rather out of a historic resentment by the Muslims towards Jews.
We always have to keep in mind that Netanyahu speaks to his own constituents. Thank you very much. Charles, a Canadian that you are.
The resident I-24 News Canadian.
Let's talk about the new Canadian Prime Minister, but first, other analysis.
There is some concern that Justin Trudeau may not be quite as smart as his father, as a journalist who's covered him concedes.
His father was considered sort of intellectually brilliant smart. Does he have that kind of smarts?
No, and he will tell you that himself. But he has, I think other people have used this word too, he has an emotional intelligence that Pierre Trudeau didn't have.
Ouch! If you do a Google image search on him, you can find every poor fashion choice that he's ever made, from a 90s boy band member 1 week before entering rehab, to an LL Bean sweater model who just underwent a lobotomy, to Johnny Depp's evil twin. And it's not just photos. There's also embarrassing videos out there, like this one, in which he explains his party trick of pretending to fall down a flight of stairs.
Let me show you how it normally works. I put a person here, and I'm passing, so it's like, hey, how are you?
Well, congratulations. This is the new Prime Minister of Canada.
The butt of many jokes. That being said, I think much of this is attributable to Harper fatigue. After 9 years in office, Canadians felt that it was time for a change. The Liberals made a tremendous gains, going from 36 seats to 184. You are already seeing a shift in policy. His first decision was to withdraw Canada from the combat mission against ISIS in Iraq. You're also going to see budget deficits being run, more focus on climate change, more multilateral engagement with the UN, for example, so to speak. Let's give him a chance to prove himself.
Right. But, you know, the guy was just a teacher. So just the name, that's enough these days?
And he's pretty.
You too, Charles. Thank you very much, especially you, Tal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a Hillary Clinton week on the campaign. First, Joe Biden announced he was not running, and then the Benghazi hearing. Daniel Ziri, I-24 News correspondent, is joining us from New York. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, Jacob.
Let's watch Joe Biden.
As my family and I have worked through the grieving process, I've said all along what I've said time and again to others, that it may very well be that that process, by the time we get through it, closes the window on mounting a realistic campaign for president, that it might close. I've concluded it has closed. This party, our nation, will be making a tragic mistake if we walk away or attempt to undo the Obama legacy. The American people have worked too hard, and we've come too far for that. Democrats should not only defend this record and protect this record, they should run on the record.
What is the Biden effect so far?
Well, I have to say, Jacob, that at first when he announced he wasn't running for the presidential Democratic nomination, I have to say there was a collective sense of disappointment here among Americans. And the Biden effect so far, I would say, is quite beneficial for the other candidates. You know, a lot of people that I spoke to over the past few weeks, I asked them who they were voting for. A lot of them said Hillary Clinton. And when I said, but what if Biden runs? Well, then they said, oh, maybe then Joe Biden. So he was sort of the first choice if he was going to run. So which means that now that he's not running and he's out of the picture, Hillary has secured a first choice among those who were going to vote for Biden. That wasn't quite the same effect for Bernie Sanders. He seems to be lagging in the polls, and even more so now, but definitely a positive effect for Hillary Clinton, and the polls actually show that her probability of winning the Democratic nomination now is about 80%. So let's say she's doing good right now.
Well, it could have been a great week for Hillary, but the Benghazi hearing started.
I was the one who asked Chris to go to Libya as our envoy. I was the one who recommended him to be our ambassador to the president. After the attacks, I stood next to President Obama as Marines carried his casket and those of the other 3 Americans off the plane at Andrews Air Force Base. I took responsibility. And as part of that, before I left office, I launched reforms to better protect our people in the field and help reduce the chance of another tragedy happening in the future.
Can Hillary survive the Benghazi affair?
She can survive. It is difficult, though. The Benghazi hearing started on Thursday, as you saw. 11 hours long hearing where she was really grilled by the lawmakers. And I have to say, this committee that is questioning her about Benghazi, so about the September 11, 2012 attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Libya, where, of course, the ambassador, Chris Stevens, lost his life, as well as 3 other Americans. Well, this committee was put in place last year, some say under pressure, to really uncover new information about these attacks. Now, this committee is a bipartisan committee. She's the key witness there. There are others, but definitely she is the key witness. And this is a bipartisan committee, but it's led by Republicans. And Jacob, we really can't help but wonder if this committee is not really having another agenda, and the goal really truly behind this committee isn't, well, to derail Hillary Clinton's campaign, as we are in a time of election and a time of presidential campaigns. So a lot of people say that actually 53% of Americans agree with that. They think that although they agree that she has a big responsibility in the Benghazi attacks, they still see this committee as having another agenda, as having a goal of simply putting a bad reputation for her and sort of, you know, moving her away from the race. That's what a lot of people believe. But, you know, if this was an attempt at really derailing her campaign, I think she did pretty well, and it's a failed attempt because she showed herself very calm. She responded very sharply. She didn't seem intimidated at all. And even at times, I would say she seemed like she was making fun of the congressmen and women who were on that panel grilling her, really. So if this was an attempt to draw blood by Republicans, draw Hillary Clinton's blood, well, I would say they really failed on this one.
But still, there's the email investigation.
There is the email investigation going on, and actually during the Benghazi hearing, those emails resurfaced, and one of the congresswomen actually took out piles of emails to show Hillary Clinton. So the scandal sort of clings onto her. The FBI is investigating this, and really what they're looking for is to see if her email setup, so the fact that she used a private server to conduct government business by email during her time as Secretary of State, well, if this had any effect on national security, if it endangered national security in any way. This is what they're trying to determine, the FBI. The FBI chief has declined to comment on the investigation several times. He's been asked about it. He said he doesn't want to comment on the ongoing investigation, but really they're going to determine if this had any effect on national security, if the information in those emails was compromised, and if so, whether charges should be brought on Hillary Clinton. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks.
Well, all of this does not prevent Donald Trump from igniting yet another controversy, this time 9/11?
It's a very calculated attempt by Donald Trump, even though it seems very spontaneous. I think perhaps it's very calculated to really focus on Jeb Bush's brother and make Jeb Bush really answer arguments and sort of defend his brother instead of focusing on the key issues. And when he gets into sort of takes the bait on this trap, well, it might not be very good for him on the long run.
Never a dull moment. Thank you very much, Daniel Ziri, I-24 correspondent in New York.
Thank you, Jacob.
And this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.